I'm so excited to talk to you, and I know we've rescheduled like 35 times, but I'm glad we both understand. We never took it personally, I hope.
Oh no, both of us are so crazy busy. I mean, finding time to get together for just even a coffee, like this is the perfect opportunity for us to get together and have a coffee.
Exactly, a virtual coffee, even though we're not far apart from each other in the city. So I know you, but I wanted you to introduce yourself to everyone on the podcast and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and what drives you.
Hey everybody, so I'm Dawn Chapman. I own Lazy Daisies Cafe in Toronto's East End. I guess you could say I'm a committed entrepreneur, and I guess at this stage of the game, after 12 years owning Lazy Daisies, I could say I'm a restaurateur as well. I always have an itch to try something new and to do something different, and I never rest on my laurels, and that's kind of what makes life exciting.
And you have another side to you. You have an artistic and creative side. Tell us about that.
So all my life, I've also done a lot of creative writing. And so I write short stories, and I've had some stories published and some poetry published. And I have a novel that's sitting in my drawer, just kind of slowly collecting dust as I build my biscuit empire. And who knows when one day I could go back to that novel and get it written. And I love the creativity of writing. I'm in a writer's group, and we meet at my house every month still, and I love it. So I've got my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the literary world still, but I just haven't had an opportunity to put pen to paper in a little while.
And tell us about your novel. What are you writing about, and how did you start that? Or what was the catalyst for starting a novel? Because creative writing, short stories, I've read some of them. They're fascinating. They're amazing. How do you then piece that together to a book? Do you have a coach, or what's the kind of...
So the big thing for me is it's almost like my food journey too, in that my book is based in Yemen. And part of the reason why I started getting into food and expanding my whole view of the world and how food, works its way into our lives is from traveling. And so being in Yemen for over a year, working on documentary films, like really triggered my interest in Yemeni culture and Arabia and the desert. And I learned some amazing sort of historical facts about the migration of Yemeni Jews from Yemen to Israel in Operation Flying Carpet, which happened in like 1948. It's an amazing story, and it kind of got stuck in my head. And I thought the only way to get it out of my head was to get it onto paper. And it's been a lot of fun. I've been researching and talked to a lot of other Yemeni authors too, and done a lot of research for the book. And that's why I'm really excited. At some point, I know I will get back to it because it's still sitting there, and the main characters, they're still sitting in my mind and waiting, knocking at the doors of my brain, going, let me out.
They're just patient. They're very patient.
Yeah.
Yes. So is it fiction or nonfiction?
It's fictional, historical fiction.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Are you in the book? Are you a character, or are you...
Not yet, but I might end up in the revision. That might end up being part of the perspective, because as a white person, I have a certain perspective of being in Yemen, and so writing from my perspective is important. Anyways, there's this whole cultural viewpoint issue that I have to deal with and work on and approach. And I have to do that with love and respect. And so that's why I'm going to need to look at the book again and see where we go.
I love that. I have another podcast guest who's been working on a book too. And she said that she has a book coach to kind of help her like dump it all out. I think it was 1,500 words at a time, and then structure it and piece it back together. How was your process, or what's your...
So I have this book that I got called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And when I do my redraft, I'm going to be looking at that book and using that as structure. But I depend largely on feedback from my writing friends and my skilled writing friends whose eyes and thoughts I really trust. And so I'll send chapters to them, and they'll send me feedback, and then I'll edit from there. But it is a big thing to grasp. And like I have big pieces of paper with charts saying who connects to who, and you know, how what happens to this character. It's very important to know in chapter 1 if something's going to happen in chapter 9. I mean, look at what J.K. Rowling does. Like, her charts of what happened throughout all that series of books are insane. Like, she does my head in. She's just so creative, and the way she can figure out all the mesh and the spider's webs of all the cross plots and characters is pretty incredible.
Does she ever give any talks about how she created and crafted the whole? Does she ever like share her?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff out there about J.K. Rowling and how she wrote her books.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there.
I'd be curious to see how how her brain works and all the creativity and all the mystical, magical things that she writes about.
But here's the thing about writing a book like that, and just, you have to have the ability to multitask and multithink. And I think for us as business owners, that's what we're doing all the time. And also as mothers, how we're spinning so many plates at the same time. How do we keep everything in the air? And I think as you're plotting a novel, it's the same way that you might plot a restaurant, the way you're planning your family at the same time, and what, you know, is going to the dentist, planning a birthday party, but you're also trying to figure out the QR codes and all the your new menu design at the same time. So really, we're constantly, and I think that's why I haven't done as much writing, because a lot of my creative mind is going into my business right now. And at the end of the day, like, I don't want to sit in front of my computer and write anymore.
Yeah.
So if I do any writing, it's in a journal, like by hand with my pen, because I associate my computer with work. So mentally, I have to be separate from that in order to think creatively.
I also feel like when I write in my journal, it's more authentic than from my computer. Is that, I'm not sure if that's a statement that
I think
kind of,
no, that makes a lot of sense. Like, it's how you feel. Like, maybe you're putting on something for, you have your business face, and then your private face, you're able to be more honest when you're by yourself. Because your business face, people are going to look at that and you think maybe they're going to judge. Whereas if it's your journal, you're like, this is for me only. That's no judgment. But I think the more that we allow ourselves to be okay with how we present to our computer face and our business face, and not worry about being judged, and the older I get, the less I worry about being judged. That is for sure. And that gives us a lot of strength and a lot of bravery. The more we let go of that whole judgment thing.
For sure. I totally agree with that. And now tell us, how did Lazy Daisies come about? Because you were, happily living life. And then how did you decide to start a cafe in kind of what was then a not so great part of town? I mean, it was up and coming, as they say. And it was, now it's a bustling, great community, but back then it was kind of unknown, east side of the city. We're talking Toronto for our listeners who are not in Toronto.
Yeah.
Tell us how that came about, because what was your career before Lazy Daisies?
So I lived in London, UK for 12 years. So after Yemen, I was in England. I moved to England with my partner at the time, was a documentary filmmaker. So we were in Yemen for a year. I came back and I lived in London, and, wasn't making a ton of money as I started working as an English teacher. And I was like, okay, I need to do something else. And I was wandering around Camden Market, which is this fantastic kind of punk and really underground kind of place. This was in the 90s. And there was all kinds of noodles and Asian food and a ton of American tourists. And I thought, what do Americans like? Bagels, sandwiches, things that they know, right? And so there was a spot that I saw, and I went to go see the owners of the market. I'm like, I'm going to go put this proposal forward. And I walk in, and they're all Israeli. And I'm like, hi, my name's Dawn. I'm from Canada. I'm an English teacher. I want to open a bagel shop. And they're like, they laughed.
Oh, so cute. And they were like, she's so cute.
So that, they gave me a chance, for which I'm forever grateful. And I had worked in restaurants all my life. Like my first job was at Venezia Pizza, answering phones and putting together boxes. I worked at McDonald's. I worked at Kelsey's. I worked at the Red Lobster. I worked, name a restaurant, I worked there. So that's what I'd always done. My roommate in university was Jewish, and that's how I had tasted my first ever bagel. And that's how I knew about bagels. So I'm in Camden Market, and they gave me the go-ahead, and away I went. Everyone else had their shops were painted black with a sign, so I painted mine bright orange. I had my friend who was a photographer, like we got bagels, and I took pictures of all the fabulous people who were there, because like there were so many interesting looking people, and they were juggling the bagels, and we took photos, and we just had so much fun creating that shop. It was called Bagel Bites, and I remember this guy coming in, and he's like, "You ever open a shop before?" I was like, "Nope, first one." And he's like, "You're not gonna make it." I was like, 10 years later, he was dust.
Oh.
He was dust, and I was still there. And I had my second shop on the other side of the market.
Oh.
So that's where I came from.
There's a word for those people in the UK.
It was interesting. So that's where I kind of cut my teeth opening my own place. So I met my husband James in London, and when I got pregnant with my first son, Josh, I said, let's move to Canada. Instead of a 1-bedroom crack den in North London, we can have a 3-bedroom semi in Toronto. What are you going to choose, right? I choose 3-bedroom semi in Toronto. And to be honest, our real estate agent did not want to show us this house that we were looking at in the East End, because he thought it was too rough. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, this is back in, 18 years ago. So 2006,
wow.
I guess. And I said, doesn't scare me. Let's look at this.
We've come from this part in London.
Totally, exactly. So we looked at this extra wide semi that needed a heck of a lot of work, but James wasn't working because he was just sort of, off the boat, so to speak. And he needed a job. So I'm like, this could be your job. Let's do up the house and move in. So that's what we did. And as time went by, I needed coffee. And there was no coffee.
Yes.
There was no coffee.
Yes. You were a tired mom that needed coffee.
Yeah. And I'm like, there must be other tired moms out there who also need coffee. And
yeah, you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a big empty storefront situation on Gerrard for a long time around this time period, like vacant storefronts. And I was like, I bet we could make one of those into a cafe. And because I'd had the experience, right? Doing bagels, coffee.
Did you get a really cheap rent back then? Or was the landlord like, yes, please? Or
yeah, he was totally into it. Great landlord. Welcomed us with open arms. It used to be a pizza and shawarma shop. And I thought, okay, why not? We'll keep it super simple. My inspo was my grandparents' farm in Midhurst, Ontario, because I spent a lot of time there growing up. And so I thought, let's do something that's based on the farm. And so we called it, one of the cows on the farm was Daisy. And what sounds good? Lazy Daisy. We went through all kinds of names. And James said, what about, I remember I was upstairs and he shouted up from the basement, what about Lazy Daisies? And I'm like, ping. I'm like,
yes,
that's
I love it.
That's it. And it became.
I love it.
Yeah.
And now, tell me about bagel making. Was that done in the middle of the night, or which type of bagels? Because there's a very big bagel debate in the world, and which side did you?
So we ended up with American bagels, American style bagels. I did. Part of being an entrepreneur is like knowing your competition. That's one of my basic steps. Like, so I traveled all around London, tasting and looking at bagels, and I landed on a very famous street called Brick Lane. And a very famous bagel shop called Brick Lane Bagels. And the owner there... I was
going to say, that was your biggest competitor, I'm sure.
Well, here's the thing, like, once you start recognizing that the pie is infinite and your piece of pie can be as big as the other person's pie, if you want it to be and you use your creativity, it's all okay. And the owner, Sammy, was amazing. He was so open, so helpful. I walked in, I said, "This is me. Hi, I'm Dawn. I'm from Canada. I want to open a bagel shop." And he's like, "Oh, here we go." He goes, "I've been doing this how many years?" He told me where to get my bagels, who to call. It was like a great bagel maker, and they delivered to me fresh every day. And then he also gave me a smoked salmon supplier. And,
oh, that is so kind.
Yes, and like I went right to the factory where everyone's wearing like their whitey boots and their hairnets and white outfits, and that's where I got my salmon every single week. And I was like, forever grateful. And it made me recognize that our industry, we shouldn't be at each other, in competition. We should be with each other and holding each other up and supporting each other, right? There's lots of ways to connect.
Yes.
And like you and I have done that. You do it all the
yeah.
time. You connect so many people, which is amazing.
Because you're all going towards a certain goal, and there's enough to go around. I mean, like you said, you have to hold each other up to push each other further, because you would want someone to do the same for you. So yeah, it's a mindset, and that was so kind of that person to do that. That is an iconic bagel place that I think is still around today.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, they churn out the bagels like crazy.
So Lazy Daisy's Cafe, grandparents' farm. Then a couple years ago, or even less than that, biscuits, the famous yummy biscuits that if you're in Toronto, anyone, you have to have this biscuit. It's always voted, number one breakfast sandwich by all the magazines and blogs and websites. So tell us about the biscuit and the evolution of the biscuit.
The evolution of the biscuit.
The biscolution.
Okay, so when I first came back from London, we, of course, drove through Tim Hortons and we got a breakfast sandwich. So in England, it was all about Sunday lunch. Always about Sunday lunch and going to the pub. And then I found here it was more about brunch and breakfast, and of course, if anyone in your family plays hockey, at some point you're going to the iconic, coffee shop, right? You're driving through, you're tasting the breakfast sandwich. So I tasted it, and I'm like, okay, all right. Let's see what we can do with this. Let's elevate this. Like, I know that we could do better. We can do better. So I went, and a person who lives around the corner owns Fresh from the Farm. And I met them at a coffee meeting at Beaumont Public School. And I had my cards out on the table for Lazy Daisies, and she took like a stack of them. I went, "Hey, wow, you must be interested in Lazy Daisy." She goes, "Oh, I own Fresh from the Farm, and we do Mennonite drug hormone-free foods." And I'm like, that's what I'm looking for. I want to make sure that I'm serving drug and hormone-free foods. That is really important to me. So it was a real simpatico moment. And we have been with Fresh from the Farm since we opened. So we get all of our bacon from them. And that was really fantastic. And yeah, so we started with them and the breakfast biscuit. So we had the bacon. I made sure we had this gorgeous white cheddar, free-run eggs, of course. And then I met a baker. And this particular, and I talked to her about my vision. And she created a biscuit. And we put it all together. And we were like, damn, this is good. This was over 10 years ago now. And I remember selling, like, she would deliver them every day. And it was like 6 biscuits. And I was like, oh boy, we sold 6 sandwiches today. I was so excited. And we were open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at that time. And I was so excited. And now we're selling hundreds a day. It's amazing how over time these things evolve. Then I met this really fabulous person named Joanna Sable, who is a real foodie and a real force in Toronto. She came in one day and we were talking about she's talking to me about the biscuits. She goes, you need more flavors. I'm like, flavored biscuits? That's a great idea. So she set up this big Yelp elite tasting sesh. And I had like about 15 different flavors. everyone tasted them and then wrote down their favorites, like rank them and put down their opinions. And from all of those, then we narrowed it down to the most popular. And we now have, from there, we had 6 flavored biscuits. So roasted ground Asiago, jalapeno free cheese. These were the favorites of everybody. And from there,
and then
because you can't rest on your laurels, right? You got to keep moving and shaking. So I was like, during the COVID hit, I'm like, well, how do we get the bagels to the peoples? If the people can't, come to us, we have to get it to them. So I had it in my mind, like, you and I have been in an entrepreneur's goal group for a long time. And I always knew that what the biscuit that we had was super special. And
it's so delicious. Yeah.
Very fluffy goodness. And so we practiced, and what we did is we froze them and then baked them off, and it worked. It worked. And I was like, this is awesome. Now, how do we package it? How do we brand it? How do we freeze it? How, like, all these things started to develop. Like, whenever you want to create something, that there's new questions, there's new challenges, but we thrive on it, right? It's the fun bit.
It's a challenge, yeah. Entrepreneurs love the challenge. They love what's next.
100%. Sometimes I wish I could rest on my laurels for a while. just for a little
boring.
bit. Just for a little bit.
Just boring.
That's fair. That's fair. So we finally nailed, and again, speaking to friends, like Christine Manning put me in contact with a designer who ended up doing our labels. And just talking to people and working with the knowledge that's out there from the friends that in the industry really helped us move forward. And we started selling our frozen biscuits in February, and I guess we're in like 32 stores now. And we just and we just signed with our first distributor.
Amazing.
La Ferme, which is, I'm super stoked about that.
Progress, slow and steady, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, growing up, what was your food? What did your parents cook at home?
I wish I could say my mom was this amazing chef, and I'm telling you, gourmet, Heinz beans and wieners, grilled cheese, tomato soup. My mom, I know, my mom has a magnet on the fridge that says the queen doesn't cook. So that's the thing. So I am the antithesis, right? I would be the one who is making my own. Once my mom made me, bless her, and like, I love my mom. She's just not a cook, and that is okay. I accept her for who she is. But I remember one day,
you gotta accept your parents. Yeah.
I had mayonnaise, a Kraft single slice, and green relish on a sandwich. And I remember going into school. Man, no one wants to trade with you if that's your kind of sandwich. So I was like, okay.
Wait, mayonnaise, relish,
green
and
relish, and Kraft single slice. Ooh, I know.
Okay.
I know. Okay, I was like, okay, we've hit a new low. It's time.
White bread or brown bread?
White bread, of course. It was
gosh.
It was the
Okay.
70s, so of course it was white bread.
Yeah, it was white bread. Yes. Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start making my own lunches now. Ultimate goal: having someone who want to trade halvesies, half for half.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was my ultimate
Did that
goal.
ever happen?
Totally. I became the person who was like in high school, especially. I was like the sandwich girl. Like, you want to go halves? Yeah, absolutely. So I just got into making Sammys and, doing my own thing, because if I wanted to eat good food, so I'd have to make it myself. That being said, Grandma on the farm, she was the baker. So chocolate chip cookies, butter tarts, and we'd go out and milk the cows in the morning. I'd go with my Uncle Howard, milk the cows, come back. We'd strain the milk through a cheesecloth, put it in the fridge, and then Grandma would bring out the cookie tin and we'd have cookies and milk, or I'd be helping her. Like, we'd make muffins together. My favorite brand, Raisin Bran muffins. were my favorite. I know that sounds
Love.
old-fashioned, but it is my favorite.
No, I
Yeah.
haven't had Raisin Bran muffins in forever.
Aren't they? They're so good. I might make some
Yeah.
after this podcast. I
You
might.
should make some, yeah.
Toad's
I'll
gonna
come
go
over
make
and have
some.
some. There you go.
And molasses. She used molasses as well.
Nobody uses molasses anymore. Well, some people do in like chewy cookies, but yeah.
Yeah, and so we use Grandma's butter tart recipe at Lazy Daisy's and her chocolate chip, her oatmeal. She used to do oatmeal raisin, but we make oatmeal chocolate chip. People
way
crave
better.
the chocolate chip. So
The raisin is a tough sell sometimes. There's very different camps about loving and hating raisins in this world.
yeah, there is. I'm in both camps. Like I love them both, for sure.
I think I'm a no raisin person, unless I don't know they're in there.
In butter tarts, no way. No raisins in a butter tart. I'm coming down pretty hard on that issue.
Okay, I agree with you there.
That's the hill I
Yes.
die on.
And who do you admire in the food industry, like globally or locally? Like what cookbooks do you have on your shelves, or who do you kind of follow to see what they're doing or have always admired?
So I think I have a lot of English influence because I have pretty much all the Jamie Olivers, and Nigella Lawson is like, I just love her because I love reading her stuff. She uses adjectives like unctuous. So, I mean, so unctuous and keep it creamy.
Unctuous.
It's just as sexy.
Is that a word?
I think I use it now whenever I can in a
Unctuous.
sentence.
I got to use that in a sentence
I
today.
mean, I think it's just so, yeah, think about it, unctuous. It's such a good word. So I've heard there's a lot of influence from that side of things. And I have every single food and drink from the LCBO. I have all the magazines. They have so many great seasonal recipes in there. But I'm not the kind of person who follows just one person. I get an idea in my head about what I want to cook for dinner, and I'll say it's something like, okay, I want to do something with chicken.
Yeah. And being part of the fun, yeah. Our chef Amanda, she loves to have pizza parties at her house where everyone makes their own pizza. So it's all like kitchen, talking, wine, drinking, and then everyone making their own pizzas and putting in the oven. So that's such a different way to have a dinner party, to have everyone participate in a hands-on way. Yeah, I love that. And now coming from Yemen to England to Canada, what kind of are, wild and wonderful foods that you've had? Because there's a lot of British foods that, or, from the United Kingdom that we over here have never had, like haggis and stuff like that. So kind of what have been some, interesting foods you've had in Yemen and the UK and even probably Canada if you have any?
I loved being in Camden Market. It's so easy to travel just by going to different booths around the market. I mean, you can have anything that you want, Korean, Thai, like Samoan. To me, that's my favorite way to travel, and we can do the exact same thing in Toronto. Like, I'm starting to follow a lot of bloggers who talk about cultural foods and restaurants because I want to try different things. We used to do Fun Family Fridays, and where we would say, okay, tonight we're going to Egypt, and we would go to
I love
Mahaz,
that.
or we're going to have, okay, tonight's all about Tibet. And so we'd read a little bit about Tibet, and then we would go to, we went to have momos down the street on Gerrard, like just to try something different.
I love it. Yeah.
So lots of different kinds of foods, and I rarely eat in the same place twice because I find that there's just too many amazing places, right? To just eat the same place all the time. I'm not this is my favorite place, this is my favorite table.
Every week, right?
I'm not that person. Same with
I
recipes.
love trying new things too.
Yeah.
I love it. And dinner party. If you were to host an elaborate dinner party, who would be invited and what would you cook? Or what would you have someone cook for you?
I love this question. And I really thought a lot about it. Do you remember there's a scene in xoLisa with Judi Dench, and they're all outside in the garden, and there's there's fairy lights and big long table, and it's very decadent. But I would move that big decadent fairy lit table to this island we went to in Greece last summer. It was called, I don't believe, Lida. And basically they had tables all on the beach overlooking on this little island of the Dodecanese, looking out onto the water with the stars reflecting off the surface. And we had these amazing, and you know, the chef is just, to me, it doesn't matter if a chef loves what they're doing, that's who can chef. You know, someone who loves what they're doing and knows their food and is using the natural ingredients, because we had the best. I would serve all the seafood. We had the flaming cheese. What is that called again? Do you remember that?
Saganaki?
That's it. Oh my gosh.
Or halloumi?
Yes.
I love that. Such salty cheese. So good.
So beautiful. And with the most beautiful wines. And because it's not just about the food, it's all about atmosphere too, right? Where you are affects how you feel about your food, and who is waiting on the table. Like, they kept coming around with this homemade drink.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I think this was fascinating. I love your journey from, you know, I guess you were a teenager or in your 20s, from Yemen to the UK to Canada. Your food journey, your entrepreneurial journey, it's very inspirational for many. And your little corner of the city is bustling and kind of has, I think, transformed because you were, you know, the original pioneer of that little neighborhood. So thank you for bringing coffee to all of us tired moms in the East End of Toronto. Have a wonderful day, and I will be over for some biscuits soon.